Thank you for joining us for the Public Narrative Podcast. I'm your host, Jhmira Alexander, and I am joined by my accountability partner, sister friend, Dr. Shaniqua Jones. How are you, dear?
I'm good, and you?
I'm good. I'm good. Tell the people a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Okay. My name is Dr. Jones, better known as the Olivia Pope of Education. Um, I even moved forward in this last season to be God's hooded girl, hashtag that. I'm love personified. Most times we talk about what we do, but not who we are. So who I am, I'm love personified. What I do, I am a restorative justice practitioner with 12 to 15 years under my belt, depending on how you look at it, in terms of educational experience and life experience within itself. I've been awarded opportunities to work with MacArthur Foundation, Illinois State Board of Education, Governor Pritzker's office, Lieutenant Governor Stratton's office in regards to what does restorative justice look like for the whole child. I was part of the whole child task force. I started the very first full online restorative justice high school homeschool network in the world. Um, and then I just, I use my voice to really focus on what does it look like to heal from a lens of restorative justice. And that's my work and that's my life mission.
How does that connect to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Well, when you think about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, especially in the workplace, most times we fail to focus on the downside. We don't focus on workplace trauma or workplace ostracism. What we focus on are mission statements that may not be conducive to meet the needs of the whole collective in terms of the culture and climate. And so when we talk about restorative justice, we have to get to the root of what were the issues. Most times we go on get in these positions and we have these different skills or skill sets and these tools and these resources. But if we're operating from a place of trauma, childhood trauma, adverse child experiences, adverse community environments, PTSD, which we know is post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSE, which is persistent stress traumatic environments, all these coupled together, you get hired in a position but not realizing you're triggered. And so is it the organization's responsibility or is it your responsibility? And it's really like, how do we own that so that everyone can be productive, everyone can thrive, and that we can be able to communicate because we have a relationship. And in order to communicate a message that's clear, we have to be able to comprehend. In order to comprehend, we have to have a relationship that by saying hello. That is the first thing we need to do. When we're in close proximity to people, we need to be able to talk. I'm on the elevator yesterday. It was awkward. It was 9 of us, and I'm like, "Ooh, the pandemic is still real." But this is my opportunity. Hey, everyone, it's Holy Week, whether you celebrate or not. I'm glad that we in this space together. And people start looking around like, me too. Like, thank you. I needed that. You never know what someone needs. So just being able to be present and be able to do the work that God has called me to do in every aspect of my life is what it's all about.
Absolutely. I'm always like just learning from you, soaking up information. So you just introduced something that I have never heard of, PTSE. Can you talk a little bit more about like how that shows up in a person's life, just period? And perhaps not just in the workplace, but like just period.
So when we talk about PTSD, we need to understand that it's not just about past trauma, it's current trauma. The trauma that's associated to the uncertainty of the pandemic, the uncertainty of the racial unrest, civil unrest, social unrest. What am I going to eat today? Do I have, like we talk about the Maslow hierarchy needs, do I have the basic necessities? Am I triggered when I go to certain places because it reminds me of something from yesterday? Can I go to the grocery store? I even give you something, if you know me, I'm transparent. My mother passed recently. And then right after my mother passed, my husband had a massive heart attack and a massive stroke. Was deemed brain dead, went without oxygen close to 40 minutes, and he's still alive. He was in intensive care 105 days, came home recently, and it's been challenging because for me, as much as I'm happy to have him home, there are moments when he take a deep breath and it reminds me of September 28th when he took that last breath before he had the heart attack. And so even though I'm excited to have him home, he is a living miracle. Mayo Clinic has reached out like we haven't seen things like this. It's because, there's a such thing as spirituality and there's a such thing as science, and they can combine at some point in time. That's a whole nother discussion. But just to give you an idea from a life application perspective, what PTSD is what I just explained to you. Of like, this is current. Yes, it may have happened September 28th, but it still follow me every day. Depending on how he breathed, depending on his gesture, depending on his characteristics in terms of his posture and his tone. It's like, oh.
Yeah. Your story, like I said, your story is profound, and you've written 2 books.
Recently, this number 12.
Oh, 12.
Yep, the last two books.
About your story, your own story, though.
Yep, all of them. So it's a combination of my own life journey, my memoir about my life, and then I also, my last two books dropped March 3rd. Those are in combination of restoration and redemption. Restoration is about my relationship with my mother and all the lessons she taught me and keeping her name alive. Because most times when people transition, we only focus on those last moments if we were able to capture those last moments. Mm-hmm. She lived 82 years. So why would I dim her light by only focusing on the last 24 hours? So that's what restoration is about. Redemption is about what I experienced with my husband, health inequities, being a black man in America with little to no insurance. And do we actually see the quality of life when someone is trying to be proactive and go to the doctor's office and attend, go to their appointments only to say like you're fine, but then you have a massive heart attack within those 24 hours of seeing the doctor who said your blood pressure is sky high, you should be admitted, but I think you'll be fine.
Wow. Do you ever get a break? So here's my question. This is why I asked this.
Look, now you see I done changed my life.
No, you fine. You are fine. So just for context, Dr. Jones and I connected in 2017. Laura Knights, who is just an amazing social worker and counselor and is the leader of Black Women Leading. Laura had a program that Dr. Jones and I were a part of, and we were assigned as accountability partners. And that initiated our relationship. But from time to time, we get together and check in and catch up and everything. And what I keep finding, even as we're talking now, is that you take so much of your lived experience and apply it to your work and use that to then serve others. Back to my original question, do you ever get a break because you're either working or you're serving, like you're among your family? Like, do you ever get a chance to unplug and do what you need to do to restore yourself?
Yeah. Sometimes it's far and few in between, and it's mostly a personal thing. I won't say a control issue, but because my husband is almost like a 48-year-old newborn, even when I have moments to say like, all right, here comes family, you're going to take good care of him. But I'm like, did they turn him? Did he eat yet? So I'm glad you asked that, because this last break I had, and what I have is every Tuesday is my day. Even if I just lay in the bed all day, it's still my day to do whatever it is I want to do. And what I decided to do was went back to my childhood. I made a pallet on my walk-in closet. I had my iPad, I had my laptop, which I did not open once. I had a couple of books, I had me some snacks, and I just laid there in the closet in Indian style having fun by myself. And I think because of social media and because of what has been normalized in society, we imagine self-care to look one specific way where you're spending it all and not making sure your soul is anchored. So yeah, that's I do unplug. Yeah. It's hard sometimes. Yeah. And I just do what God tells me to do, even when it makes me uncomfortable.
Sure. And you live a life that's so yielded. And I mean, that's the only way to really explain how things have happened in your life. So unless you want to, but I would really prompt the folks to buy your books to learn more about your story. But I'll just say, at the time that I came in on your story, you were releasing, is it 12?
Yep, 12, a memoir to my younger self.
And the launch was at Governor State? You were releasing that. And I just thought, like, how does she know when to do what to do? And what is it like to know that, like, this is the time for all that your life has built up to? So, like, let's say it is, let's say you're sitting on stories from like 10 years ago, but you've never released them. Like, how do you know when it's time for this? Because it doesn't look like you are ever out of season, ma'am. Like,
thank you for that. It's a move of God. So, like right now, I'm working on my 13th book. It's an ebook, and it's really focusing on home ownership. My husband and I became homeowners and we're parents of 10 kids, have had some egregious and heinous things to happen to us in our life, but it was for our good. And most times when you have so many things, so many challenges happening in your life, you feel as if you can't accomplish that one specific goal. And so for us to become homeowners in the midst of the pandemic was just like a move of God, especially when we're talking about most times, yeah, it's a lot of disheartening things happening in the pandemic, but there were a lot of great things that happened too. And it was like my elevation came during the pandemic. Like people knew who I was, but then I had this opportunity to work with MacArthur Foundation, and then to have a team in Nigeria and a team in India, and then for my mother to witness these things that she prayed for that she thought were lost because of some of the things that happened in my life. She's like, I'm glad God allowed me to live long enough to see my prayers to be answered. So I'm not out of season because God is not out of season.
I know that's right.
Sometimes I can't explain it, but then those times that I can, what I can say is my favorite two words: God is. Everything I do, even when it is so uncomfortable, I'm like, nah, G, I ain't know none of that. you got the wrong one for that. I'm about to go back to the streets then. But no, I've learned, especially being an educator, you know, I've been a district administrator, I've been the head of deans, I've been in a lot of great positions from fourth grade all the way to the doctoral level. And the one thing that has remained true is being able to humanize every person you encounter. And because I've had my own challenges, it's almost as if God has allowed me to live beyond my circumstances so that no matter what the circumstances that may present itself from someone else, I can always approach it from a place of empathy and not sympathy. I can always approach it as like, I'm not going to antagonize you. I'm Shaniqua. I'm from Harvey World. I've been in the trenches before. I'm not putting on a show, but like, what's up, fam? What is it that you need from me? And then what do you need to be whole again or as whole as possible? Those are the questions like, dang, I don't have an answer for that. I don't want you to have because if you have an immediate answer, then I'm somewhat like, Right. But I need people to understand that I'm not a surface person. I'm about relationship, and we don't have to talk every day. But I have students that when they found out that Pops, which is my husband, Pops went down, like, gee, what you need? I need someone to take the trash out. I need someone to, like help me get things rearranged. And so even though I gave birth to 5 children, I'm a mother to many. And that's just where it's at.
These moments that have come full circle from circumstance to triumph and victory, like what is it like to live in those moments, particularly through what we've seen, like through the pandemic, like the uncertainty of it all? Like you've had to live a lot of what you teach. So like, what is it like to live those full circle moments?
If I gotta be totally honest, it's like this simultaneous reality. Shout out to Nicole Hall for that. She dropped that in my spirit. I'm like, I've always had this concept of things happening for you, to you, and it doesn't feel like it's fair. But simultaneous reality is like all these great things and then all this trouble. And so my hardships look different. They just not the hardships I had when I was 20 and 30. I'm, my 40s now, right? But it's glorious. Even when I watched my best friend die in our bedroom, which is my husband, it was still glorious because I don't know how many people are iPhone users. I'm doing this so I don't have to cry. We have Androids and we have iPhone users or whatever, but I know I have an iPhone. And one of the features with the camera is that you can focus on the subject matter and blur everything else out. And in that moment, it was like God was speaking to me as I see them reviving him and resuscitating him. And it was like, this is both of yours redemption process. You want the promise, you got to go through the process. We live in a day and age because of social media and all these other different things that are happening that we talk about the glory, we talk about the promise, but we don't talk about the process. And so one of the things that was gratifying for me in this season was knowing that even though this is a long road to recovery for all of us, he's gonna come out on the other side, and this too shall pass. So I apply that to every area of my life where I see I know what it's like to be homeless. I know what it's like to be poverty stricken. I know what it's like to live with a mental illness, because I do. I don't survive, I live. I know what it's like to be a teen mom. I know what it's like to be ostracized. I know about church hurt. I know what it's like to be raped, sexually assaulted. But I also know what it's like to make a comeback. I know what it's like to get out of your own way and allow God to be everything he needs to be in my life. I know what it's like to have people mention your name in rooms that you never even knew existed. So it's all for his glory.
You wear so gracefully these experiences in a way that makes you so approachable.
Sometimes too.
So approachable. Like, did you growing up, did you see yourself with a career in public service?
You know what? I wanted to be a child support lawyer.
Really?
I was in 6th grade and we had career day. Everybody, nurse, doctor, lawyer. But I was specific. I want to be a child support lawyer, because if I hear anything else about child support in this household, like, obviously that's where the money at. Because we talk about this every day. Man, would you give this woman her money? Because, bro, like, we out of control. So I guess so I always wanted to serve. But also, I'm a preacher's kid. So I grew up in a church where my mother had me at 40, my dad was 45. So mind you, my mom was my best friend. I didn't get a chance to hang with the kids at church. I sat on the first row with the mothers and the nurses. I read scriptures. I sung songs. I was technically part of a ministry, even though I was too young to understand what ministry consists of. I was my mother's sidekick, so there was always this form of service from a spiritual perspective that it may not have hit me right then and there about, serving. But definitely I realized how every area of my life has prepared me for such a time as this.
And so would you say another one of those full circle moments, you said you grew up like your mother's sidekick. In her last days, like, did that relationship come full circle?
So I don't know what happened. It felt like the day I turned 15, I walked away from everything that was my foundation. Like, God ain't real. I don't love my mama no more. I don't want to be part of the church. Just didn't know who I was. I was lost. And it was, I think it's so important too. Like, the reason why a lot of the youth love me is because I understand. I've never been a liar. And sometimes when I want to lie, because it's like, I don't want to tell you this one, I'm going to just get quiet then. But I recall this one particular service that was preparing us, the saints were praying over the youth as they was getting ready to go into a new school year, and, God be a hedge of protection over them as they, go to and from their destinations, clear their minds so they can learn the things they need to learn to be thriving individuals, all those great things. And one of the questions that was being asked, even if I knew the answer because of conversations I was having with some of my good girlfriends, we 15, we coming into our own, or so we think. And Mother Webster was her name, God rest her soul. And she asked, they called me Little Missionary because my mom was a missionary before she became an ordained minister. And so whatever she was, I was little that. And so I was Little Missionary. And she said, Little Missionary, do you want to be saved? And, if you need to look it up, look it up. But if you want to be saved, and I was like, no. And everybody looked around like, she must have hit a question. I heard everything very clearly. No, I don't want to be saved, because what I have been taught is that in order to be saved and accept God as your Lord and Savior, it has to look like this. And I don't fit that.
You didn't want the culture.
I didn't want religion. I want spirituality. I want God. And so it came full circle, because even though I lost my way, I had my born again moment. And like 2018, my mother and I really, like, we were good, but we still never had the conversation about the hurt and the pain that we both brought to each other. Like that level of accountability. Like, I pushed God on you in a way that it pushed you away. Yeah. Or I was so caught up in wanting to be the opposite. If my mother said yes, I don't even care if it was for my good. It's a no for me, So having those moments and being able to authentically forgive, and that's what restorative justice is to his soul, is that it's not about what happened at the surface, it's what's at the root that brought everything to the surface. So how do we get to the root cause of the problem so that we can resolve it and move forward? And the root cause was the fact that my mother wanted me to have this life that she didn't have. And so as most parents, as most educators, as most people who are involved in some type of form or fashion in a young person's life, you want something for them, but if they don't want it for themselves or don't even have the clue of, or the context to understand what it is that you want for them, that's where the disconnect comes. And so I'm just glad that it did come full circle. I took great care of my mom from 2018. I mean, we always had a pretty good relationship, but those last 4 years of her life, it was everything.
That's excellent.
I have no regrets.
That's excellent. That is so awesome. How did you lived restorative, but how were you introduced to like the methodology of restorative practice?
So it was first introduced to me at South Suburban College when I was taking some classes to hopefully obtain my associate's degree. And that's when I really wasn't taking school seriously. But that was the only thing that kind of captured my attention, because the way it was approached to me wasn't about criminology. It wasn't about criminal justice frameworks. It was more about what happened to you. It felt therapeutic. I'm like, is this a social work class, counseling? What's happening? And then when I transferred to Governor State University, I met my mentor, James Coldren, who is like a profound individual who is very instrumental in the criminal justice field and education, as well as like a policymaker in terms of FBI and CIA. Like, he's in there. I'm like, I know this guy. and he kind of just took me under his wing and started showing me what restorative justice looked like in different communities, because he was connected to these communities because students needed these internship or externship hours. And so he put me in position to be in the right place at the right time. And I just been rocking and rolling with it ever since. Shout out to Catherine Rayford, the Illinois Balance and Restorative Justice Project. I've been a part of all these different things. Judge Sophia Hall, I've worked with her in the past. Even the Cook County Southland Juvenile Justice Council, I was the Restorative Justice Chairwoman from its inception up until last year. I've just been afforded a lot of great opportunities. And then when I got my doctoral degree and really like hit the ground running in the field of education, is when I was blending restorative justice from a life application perspective to what education needs, especially, can't even say post-pandemic because we're still in it. But what does it look like to humanize a child in the classroom is by relationship building. And I don't care how much of education you have, if you don't have a heart, it doesn't matter. And the babies will eat you alive.
Yes, they will. Yeah. Yes, they will. Can you share any success stories, like from like applying that methodology and that approach to restorative in like the homeschool you created and just other work that you've been a part of, like any success stories from participants?
Most definitely. Whether it's when you look at it from a high school that I worked with, I helped them authentically bring suspension down by 38% prior to the pandemic. By focusing on restructuring the climate and culture, by making sure that when we're making phone calls home to parents because of some type of discrepancy or infraction, that the conversation is held with a high posture and tone that still respects the parent and not intimidate or antagonize them. And then to also not just call when there's an issue, but call when things are going great. What does an invitation look like? What does it look like, when we talk about these parent coordinators? What does it look like from the moment we walk? Like I've done success story, a great one is, most times when people see me, if they don't know me, they don't know I'm Dr. Jones. And I'm okay with that. I don't need to wear a tag. But we live in a day and age where if you have this position, if you have these titles, you need to look a certain way. And so most times they don't know it's me coming in as the consultant or the keynote speaker, because I'm still going to wear my kicks. I'm going to wear my hoodies. You know me. And so I did an observation where I walked the block that the school is on. And as I approach the school, what does the curb appeal look like? Does it even look like I want to be here? Does it look like the juvenile detention center on Hamilton? When I walk in, what does it smell like? What do the walls look like? What type of artwork is displayed? Who is the first person I come in contact with? What did they say? How did they look? How did they approach me? Did they approach me? When I'm escorted to the principal's office or to the main office, what does it look like when I walk in the main office? What kind of locks are on the doors? What do the lockers look like? Are they small? Are they equipped to, a child who may have more than, they may not just be carrying a book bag. It might be their entire life. Yeah. What does it look like to go in the cafeteria? And so when I did this whole assessment to help them better understand, like when we talk about meeting the needs of the whole child, it's the people that's connected to the child too. And so we've had some great success stories because they were able to get a grant to renovate the school because I'm like, I wouldn't dare walk in here like, baby, bye. Like, I'm in there like, man, Joe, as soon as I finish speaking, I'm out the door.
If you are like that just visiting, the environment is not conducive for a child to learn.
Yep. And then how do we also help our children learn in a way that it's exciting for them? Yeah, TikTok might not be your jam, but believe me and you, if I can get you to understand the square root of 64 through a TikTok challenge, then let's do it. Or, just being able to think outside the box by throwing the box away. Yeah.
I mean, you certainly did that in creating the homeschool. So, like, what inspired that? Because, I mean, where do you even start?
God's preparation. So we know here in the state of Illinois, our school system pretty much shut down like mid-March 2020. January 27th was my youngest daughter's last day of school. I took her out because if I've done all I believe I can do, like I know I can't protect her from everything, none of my children, but I can make sure that you have a home. I can make sure that you have a home that you can call your own. And even though I've been through a lot in my life, I'm older now. So my first set of children, my two oldest, may have a different experience than my last three. But what happened, she goes to school and she literally watches her best friend, this young man, get stabbed 6 times in class. Another student got upset because the teacher said something that he didn't like, and the other young man laughed, and he grabbed the scissors off the teacher's desk and stabbed him. My daughter FaceTimes me, and she's covered in blood. Now, I'm an educator. I'm at work educating other people's children, 5,500 children, and then my own is suffering, and I can't get to her fast enough. And that was her last day.
Did the young man live?
He lived, but he lived because he ran and found the social worker's office, and because he had a relationship with the social worker, he knew where she kept her extra set of keys because he was like her helper. If he had not had that relationship with that social worker who was off that day, he would not have known where the extra set of keys were to go in the office and lock himself in to get away from the young man who was still chasing him.
Wow.
And so I hate that happened, and I already was like, I need to take her out because something just don't sit right. And, you got to learn how to trust your gut. Totally. And I took her out, and my husband and I, he became the gym teacher, which I don't know how this happened, but I was getting up at 6 a.m. doing drills. Like, she's the student, not me. It was cool, though. I don't know if y'all remember, like, who grew up in school, like, but it was punishment where you had to get up against the wall and do the squats. And I don't know if that was like he was upset with me about something, but he became her gym teacher. The oldest daughter became her art teacher. And then I reached out to the village like, hey, I'm good in English, but I got a little gangster in me. So let's not have me be her English guy. I'd be like, man, Joe, it is what it is. So I reached out to the village, and people thought that was cool. And I did this for this one child. And the way she excelled in terms of her ability to not just read, but comprehend what she read. And that's where we have a downfall in our educational system, because our children are already not reading at the level they need to read at. But then the other thing that we don't talk about is, are they comprehending what they read? Because I could read eloquently, but then ask me to interpret it. Exactly. And so me being able to challenge her one-on-one, I realized she needed a one-on-one setting. And be able to be okay with that, because most times as parents, as educators, or anybody that's significant in a child's life, we have this idea that if your child don't learn the way that you think is acceptable, then they got an issue and we don't want anybody to talk about not my baby, right? And so I realized she had a different learning approach, a learning style that she needed this one-on-one, and she thrived significantly. And because of her, the other two girls was like, well, you homeschooling her? Because they in high school, she's still in middle school. And we tried the high school thing, that once it was time for her to go to high school, now all three of them are together, it didn't work. Because she had got so accustomed to having this one-on-one. And then other parents was like, man, if you was able to do that with her, because, you know, people who know her, like, she can give you a run for your money. And when they saw the impact, the great impact that we were having as parents and the village coming together for her, I reached out to the same people who were helping me, like, would you do this for a few more children? And that's how it all came about. And so we were able to homeschool our three youngest girls. One is a sophomore now, one is a senior, and one graduated last year. And because the Illinois State Board of Education, they do have a lot of requirements, but when it comes to homeschool, it's not as egregious as it is in other states. So I encourage any parent, and it may not be for everyone, but for those who are looking for something extravagant in what they feel is extravagant, because a lot of times we have all these ideas, but are we going to be solution oriented? So I definitely would say, you know, think about what that could possibly look like. So right now we have 5 children. Out of those 5 children, they're all thriving in their own right. 3 want to go to college. 2 do not. So thinking about what does this look like? So what is the alternative? Do you have a LinkedIn profile? All of them are studying Spanish with one of our educational consultants, Latricia Alexander. And so now that they're learning Spanish, because I remember I took Spanish in high school, but after uno, dos, tres.
I took it in college also. I'm not much far back, much further than.
So they do it. They have been doing this the entire school year, and then going to different communities to learn more of the life application perspective of it all. And then the goal is also they're working on making sure they have their passports. So this summer they'll be going to Mexico and doing some educational tours and being able to apply that from a global perspective.
That's excellent. That is so excellent. You had what you needed to advocate for your child, and it served the purpose of being able to advocate for other young people in this way. Like, how else do you, aside from what you shared on the homeschool front, how else do you advise folks to learn advocacy wherever they are, whatever station in life they might be in?
First, dig deep inside. Even right now, I'm advocating for health equity, because we talk about it and it sounds good until you're faced with a situation where you realize it's really not there. So I've just been fortunate enough to create meaningful relationships that when I don't know the answer, I am connected to someone who may have the answer. So I believe relationship is the first. Well, no, let me take that back. The relationship you have with yourself and God or your higher power, and no knock to anyone in terms of your spiritual or lack thereof, your journey. Your journey is your journey, but being so clear on where you are and who you are. And I think for me, to pretty much answer your question, advocacy starts with 3 questions. Well, not even 3 questions, 3 prompts of who you are in life. The person you were, which is typically childhood if you're an adult. The person you are, which is your present day, and then the person you're becoming. And at no point in time, those 3 should be the same. And when you find yourself in situations where, I feel like I'm reverting back to old ways, check yourself quick enough. Don't let it it is what it is. Is what it is. It's a trauma response. That's because that's something you don't want to deal with, and you hope it work itself out, and guess what? It won't. And so when you have this opportunity to kind of just categorize, I know where I was in some dark places. But my darkness is still dark in one area of my life, but it's not that type of darkness. And I'm also equipped with the right tools, skills, and resources to come out into that light so that I can continue to do the work. And then the work that I continue to do will propel me and elevate me to be the woman I'm becoming. Shout out Michelle Obama.
You carry your light so well, and it certainly shines among all of us. When I think about the future of civic engagement, advocacy work, restorative practice, I want to be optimistic, but I know that there are, how do I put this? There are people invested in it because it's attractive and it trends. And then I know that there are people who are passionate and they commit their life to it. And whether it's popular or trending, it doesn't matter. They're going to be invested in it. And I see you as one of those people. How do you navigate, having to sacrifice as much as you have to gain the understanding that you have among people who, in their own right, they may very well be thought leaders, but the motives, and this certainly it's not ours to dig through, but to know that, like, if you're going to provide access to resources, meaning reference materials, books, whatever it is, to, like, for folks to do their own deeper study, like, you have to vet those sources to make certain that these folks really know what they're talking about, or else you do much more harm. So, like, how do you navigate really being about it among those who are just in it for a season?
So I've always been very unorthodox, and what may have been ostracism in one season or maybe in isolation is now separation for the greater good. I don't follow like a mainstream approach, and I always have asked God to give me the natural and spiritual discernment to determine how to approach people, places, and things. And so, like, right now, I've been fortunate enough to be supported with some work with WDB Marketing and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois. And because of that, it has also propelled me in the right direction to have the connections needed in regards to health equity. But even from a restorative lens, like right now, I have a free introduction to restorative justice session that I'm doing that's virtual or in person, so people can gain a better understanding of what restorative justice is. Because most times, the word justice and your interactions with justice will most times, honestly, will move you away from even wanting to think about what RJ is. Like, it sounds like a kumbaya moment. It sounds like justice really isn't being served. It sounds like it's just a slap on the wrist. It sounds like someone can kill and get away with murder. And it's not that when you understand the deep-rooted concept of where restorative justice originally come from a historical context. And so that's why my approach is from, who hurt you? You're like, don't talk to me like that. But I don't just,
Some people get offended.
Right. And I mean, I've been in a situation like, you so guarded, like, who hurt you? But I'm always that person in the room, like, if I'm in a room full of people, they like, she about to be the one to say something. Like, well, I mean, I don't have nothing to lose, and I'm not trying to be funny in this season, but it's like, I don't have a mother and father anymore. I have God, and as long as I got him, I'm gonna say what needs to be said. I'll risk it all. And I don't come off as being bold or cocky, but I come off as being confident, and I'm sure of myself. So that's one of the ways I vet is when I have encounters with people. I know that it's not by chance or coincidence. It's on purpose. And I just want to make sure I'm clear on what that purpose is. And I have seen people monetize restorative justice because it sounds good. And if I can get a great, collect a check or be approved as a vendor, I'm not mad at people for doing what they do, but I also am the person that say, do your due diligence, do your homework, and not just Google. Have some conversations with people. Let's talk about the success rate. And then also, how do you define what success look like? Because when we talk about RJ, I do have great success stories, but when it boils down to it, it's hard to quantify someone's emotions. So I'm just grateful that I still have this platform, and I'm grateful that the elevation is happening even in the midst of my storm.
Yeah. You said something that I want to circle back to when you asked that about you coming to spaces and you ask who hurt you. What I appreciate about you asking that question is that, like, I know, and I'm sure folks will soon learn, but you know how to navigate wherever that response takes you. And that, I think, sometimes is missing from folks who enter the space, begin to initiate. It's like you need a blueprint for where are we going next. Even from this conversation to the next activities or actions, like what is the next natural step of progression, and what makes sense for us to continue to build on where we're going to, because folks are going to know, to what end are we doing this. You know what I mean? Are you just here to dig through my story? What do you need this information for? And so simultaneously you're capturing information so that you can be of value and of service in the space that you're in, but at the same time there's trust that needs to be built that you didn't breach or cause to be in disrepair. But like, how in navigating all of that, you have the tools to apply that. Like, at what point do you completely like take your hands off if a person is a little resistant to responding?
So I'm huge on reading the room. So and my husband is he a Southern guy, and so any place we would go, he would position himself to be seated in a certain place because he wanted to be able to see what's happening, where the X is. And I used to be like, man, I'm hungry. He'd be like, no, we can't sit there. We'll wait another 15 minutes. Oh, my stomach is telling me no, right? But and that's why it's so great to know who is in close proximity to you, whether it's a spouse, a loved one, a friend, a sister, friend, whoever, like, because they're a reflection of you and you are a reflection of them. And he's taught me, just from being able to be seated and postured and putting yourself in position in rooms, is prepared me for the rooms that are not restaurants.
That's right.
That no matter what the room is, where am I positioning myself? Why do people choose to sit where they sit? Especially in situations where, like, we're talking about some hot topics. Things gonna get a little touchy. So why did this person choose to sit up front opposed to this person choose to sit in the back? And so that's one of the questions as an icebreaker, like, hey, everyone, talk to me. Why did you choose to sit right here? And I go sit right by them. And then I don't touch people until I see that lean come in. Or if I see somebody do like this to take their shoe off, they getting comfortable. Or somebody like, do this, they're frustrated. Like, you got to learn how to read the room and do a temperature check. And like, after you having these deep discussions, like, hey, how everyone feeling right now? I know I'm feeling pretty good, but I do this. So this might be new for you. So I just want to let me slow down a little bit. We good? And their response sometimes may not, no, I'm not good. I don't like none of this. And I'm like, I could see, I feel it. What is it that you need right now? Do you want to stay? I want to stay, but I don't really have too much more to say. And I thank you. Your response, whether it's the response you think I want or not. And there's this book called Untethered Souls by Michael Singer. That was a game changer for me. Because the essence of the book was about how many times, especially when it comes to conflict and confrontation, how many times have we conjured up in our mind what the response of the other person is going to be? And so you come into a situation to confront someone, and then they don't respond the way you thought they were going to respond. You like, I don't even know where to go from here. Right. So, like, we put so much pressure on ourselves to think for other people, and that's the reason why we can't progress. And so when I go in spaces, there are times I used to have my cue cards, my husband and I, like, on the way to the, I had to go to Ohio and speak. I was the keynote speaker for, like, Black Student Union. And it was a jam-packed room. This was actually the best response they seen from the Black students at the institution. And I got there and everything I thought I was going to say. It was like, nope. The other thing is I had just got these brand new Spike Lee Jordans, like special edition, and I had the whole fit on. So I don't, typically I don't look like Dr. Jones, right? The thing was that I had the relationship with the vice president. So the vice president know what I look like. Vice president know how I roll, how I talk, the whole nine. But when the students responded so greatly, the vice president could no longer be the person that introduced me. The president, like, I want to introduce her. But he never met me. He never even looked at my bio. He never looked at me on LinkedIn. So he had no clue what was getting ready to happen, who he was getting ready to encounter, because he thought he was going to get a woman with some kitty heels on. And I'm be real, if you ever see me with some kitty heels.
I've never.
Just find out what happened.
I'm not counting.
So it's a catch to it. So I'm getting ready to go out on stage. My husband is like positioning himself because he's my cameraman and all that good stuff. And he's like, welcome to the stage, Dr. Shaniqua Jones. And I come out and he put his hand over the mic and was like, oh, we waiting on Dr. Jones. And I was like, I took his hand off the mic. I'm Dr. Jones, everybody. Welcome. Mind you, the audience heard everything that was transpiring. Yeah. And so I used that. I could have easily been like, man, Joe got me bent. You know what I'm saying? But I was like, this is a teachable moment that I don't care who you are, where you are somebody. Everybody, get up, stand on your feet. Like I had to, that was not part. And I shifted. That was one of my best speaking engagements because God allowed me to have that experience. I could have used that and like, I ain't finna speak. And I ain't cashed your check already. And you signed, like we're good. I'm straight. I could have easily just, folded up and went on about my business. But there was a Shaniqua in that audience who like, oh, I could be a doctor and still wear my kicks. Yeah. So I've learned, my experiences shape me for every room I encounter. Sorry about that. Can you, my bad. That's my husband, alarm.
But no, I appreciate you being here and just learning more about your story and talking with you. I mean, we've had tons of check-ins, but this is the first time we've done this on camera. And what I love about every time I talk to you, it's like getting to know you and meeting you. I just shouldn't say getting to know you. It's like meeting you again for the first time. And it's like so many layers to you, ma'am, that, I mean, just thank you for using your story and your experiences the way that you do, because you for sure make the world around us so much better.
Thank you.
You really, really do. How can folks connect with you and learn more about how to support your work?
I'll make it easy for us. Purple Path by drj.com. Because, you'd be like, oh, follow me on Instagram, this. And then be like, follow me. Like, can we just get some, a connection here? But yeah, Purple Path by drj.com. Everything from my books, trainings, speaking engagements, freebies. I do a lot of things for the community that's free, especially when it comes to education, creative exercises and icebreakers, the whole nine. Everything you need to know. Bio, CV, everything. One-stop shop.
Thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
I'm Jhmira Alexander, and this has been the Public Narrative Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.